If the bad things in life outweigh the good things, if one accepts this sort of pessimism about existence, does this imply that death is not an evil? Now, in discussing death, it's important to say that we are not talking about the process of dying and everything related to this. We're not talking about any fear one might have towards death or about how one's death might affect others. What we're talking about is death itself for the one who dies. So, suppose someone came into your room tonight and killed you in your sleep painlessly and without you being aware of any of it. Would this be a bad thing? Has something bad happened to you? Now, one important thing we notice about death is that death is not the sort of thing that is bad for us in the way that pain, for instance, is bad for us. In that pain is bad intrinsically, whereas the same cannot be said, or at least it's not clear how it can be said, about not existing. That is, there's nothing bad about being dead as such, because for one thing, we no longer exist at that point. Thus, Epicurus famously argued that death is nothing to us, for when we are, death isn't, and when death is, we will be no longer. Now, a common response to Epicurus is that while death itself may not be bad, death can be bad in a certain relational sense, inasmuch as it deprives us of a future of good things. So, according to this view, the badness of death consists not in not existing itself, but in the loss of good things, and being deprived of a life that would have been good. Now, if we accept that this is more or less the right way to think about death, the right way to account for its significance, and further, we accept that there is in fact more bad in our lives than good, and I think there are good reasons to think this is the case, this would seem to imply that death isn't bad at all. In fact, what this seems to imply is that death is good, inasmuch as it prevents a life that would have been bad on balance. Now, things can get slightly more complicated if we consider at what point in our life ceasing to exist is good for us. After all, a life that is bad on balance might still have its good days, even good years. My own feeling, however, is that just as there are no good lives on balance, there are no good years on balance. In fact, I'm inclined to say that there are seldom good days on balance. Well, if this is true, then ceasing to exist would be good at more or less any point in an individual's life. And although we often worry that promortalism, or if you like, a pro-death position, would imply killing, this need not follow from it, even in those cases where killing would, let's say, be painless and affect no one else. And this is because, as I've stated elsewhere, we generally demand more certainty in our convictions when imposing decisions of this kind on others, especially one as serious and final as death. That is, it's one thing to be confident enough to subject yourself to something. It's another thing to be confident enough to subject others to it. And so if this argument works, a pro-mortalist, seems to me, can coherently oppose killing. So that is all for now, and thanks for listening.